Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts, in the shadow of the Great Blue Hills. We are so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Judy Hedlund. She'll be here to celebrate her beautiful picture book, Over Bare Underwear. Before we invite Julie into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram. Check out our Reading With Your Kids page on Pinterest. And if you want to connect with us on Twitter, it's at JedleyMagic. And of course, we would love it if you could sign up for our free newsletter. You can do that at readingwithyourkids.com. And if you want to contact us through email, it's really easy. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the contact button that you find at the bottom of the page. Joining us right now from Rome and the beautiful nation of Italy, our guest is here today to celebrate the release of a beautiful, fun picture book. It's called Over Bare Underwear. I think I forgot some commas in there. Please welcome to the show, Julie Hedlund. Hey, Julie, how are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me today.
And this is not a book about bare underwear. I missed some commas, correct?
Yeah, it's Over Bare Underwear.
Oh, okay, cool.
Over and under are characters in the book. So there's a lot of wordplay, as you can probably gather from the title.
This is exciting. I love books that have that wordplay. It's just something that it drives some people crazy, I think. But I really love it. There was one of my friends who is a magician did a rope trick with knots, and it's not a knot, it's a knot, and it was just hilarious.
Yes, I love wordplay, and I love books like that. They're some of my favorite to read, and I really appreciate authors who do experiment with language and with words, and to open a book and to be able to discover all the ways in which they might play with a certain topic or puns or what have you. So it's definitely one of my favorite.
So you mentioned that over and under are characters in the book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the idea came to me as sort of just thinking about spatial relationships, you're always looking when you're writing picture books for an interesting angle on something. And I thought, what if the angle is these characters have names that are also prepositions, and I could picture them on like a teeter-totter was the image that I got, or a seesaw, depending on where you're from. And over is over, under is under, over, and then it switches. Under is over, and that wordplay sparked this idea, which then expanded to a challenge of, can I write a book that would be a full story, a complete story, that would have multiple layers, and would also use compound words, kind of over, comma, bare, under, comma, where. The words could also be in a different form. They would be compound words. So, for example, there's all underwear is an additional pun, even though we're using it as WEAR, but there's a homophone element in there as well. Overlook, undercook, and so I just had a lot of fun with that and wanted to use that humor in those concepts to create a story that ultimately is about friendship and belonging, inclusion, and what happens, when somebody tries to join the party and you're not 100% sure about them.
Yeah. I think that's that whole idea of talking to kids about inclusion and friendship. That's a theme that we've really celebrated here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. And it's really important. And I love that we're talking about this now. I remember and when you were talking about the words and the concepts, and it made me think back to when, right before I met my beautiful wife, when I was working at a school for kids with severe developmental disabilities. And my job was to get them into the community. My job was to give them opportunities to be included. But one of the challenges I faced, one of the teachers came up to me and said, hey, can you figure out a way to help this kid understand the concept of yes? And I said, well, yeah, it's the opposite of no. And she's like, no, you know our kids. You know where they're at. And that was impossible for me. But the whole idea of inclusion back there in 1988, 1989, it was this new concept. The idea was for you to fit in. If you didn't fit in, hey, you're really not welcome here. And that attitude was kind of accepted. And even in the community of disabled folks, my kids who were so challenged, they weren't accepted by folks who were just blind or just, no, stay over there. You don't even fit in with us. So I'm really happy that we're talking about inclusion, and we're encouraging parents to sit down with our kids and tell them how important it is not only to not push kids away and not exclude them, but to actively include them, actively reach out to be inclusive.
That's right. And also not to operate on your preconceived notions of who that person is, or based on what they look like, or what you might have heard about them, or what stories, might have been told. So in this case, we have a bear whose desire, is to join the friends and play. But of course, they think, oh gosh, it's a bear. Help. We're gonna get attacked. We're gonna get eaten. And of course, the hilarity ensues as the misunderstanding, goes forward, until they realize that they were wrong about the bear's intentions, and they set out to correct that wrong. And so I do think that it's important to talk about inclusion, and this takes place on a playground, and that was intentional, right? So it's where a child would typically be playing, and you can sort of imagine them extending this idea to another child who maybe doesn't look like them, or maybe doesn't speak like them. And that's sort of the deeper layer, but the humor in it and the wordplay was sort of the hook, kind of how I'm going to hopefully bring them in and get them interested in these characters, in this story, in their journey.
Well, I know certainly the 5 or 6 or 7 year old me would have would have been all in once I saw underwear, no matter how it was spelt.
Exactly. And the fact that it's in the title, and, right smack on the bear's bottom on the cover, we're definitely not being subtle about that particular wordplay, because what kid doesn't want to talk about underwear or say underwear, or especially to say it when it doesn't really mean underwear in this case. So they feel like it's kind of an inside joke with them. So I'm excited about that. And the humor on the cover with illustrator Michael Slack, I mean, he just did such a great job of elevating the humor throughout the whole story.
Yeah. I'm curious. Now, I know books take a long time to write, and, I'm not sure when you started this project, but is it just a coincidence that you're in Rome, you were sharing with us you're in Rome because somebody that you care an awful lot about is starting a new adventure in a foreign country. And I imagine that there's a part of you thinking, I hope this person I love feels included here in this new world. Was that just a coincidence, or was there a part of you that knew that this moment might happen when this started, the project began?
It's really interesting that you ask me that question, because I've realized over the years that a common theme in my writing is this sense of belonging. And certainly when you're a parent, and I do have 2 children, one of whom is starting college in Rome, which is both very exciting but also completely terrifying, right? And as my kids have gone through all different stages of their lives, of course, I've been worried about, will people love them and accept them the way that I do? Will they see them the way that I do? And what happens if they don't? And I also feel like I've been on that journey myself personally as well. I think most of us have. It's a human need. I think that's fairly universal, to be seen, and for who you are, and accepted for who you are. And I think many times we don't feel as if we are. So if this book helps parents, teachers, educators, etc., approach this topic in a fun way, but still in a way that can reach kids, into thinking about these ideas, that would be amazing. I mean, I'm here in a foreign country right now. I've traveled a lot throughout my life, and there's definitely always a little sense of, what are they going to think about me? Am I speaking enough of the language to get by? I think what you said about you're trying to fit yourself in. What if we also asked people to sort of open up their idea of what fits?
Yeah. Yeah, that was it. That was an idea that again first came to me when I was working with these kids with severe developmental delays, and they were very, very different, both physically and intellectually, and it was difficult for them. And I remember being at a conference and hearing a speaker say, "Our kids can't change. But we can change to help them fit in." And I think that's, for me, that was empowering to hear that message, to understand that I'm not all powerful, but I am powerful enough to change the world so that this person can feel as if they belong. I think that could be an incredibly empowering message that we could share with our kids, to help them understand that you're not going to wave a wand and make COVID go away, but boy, you can open up your heart so that this person who is different, maybe walks differently, maybe speaks a different language, looks different, wears different clothes, we can change so that we can help that person feel more included.
Yes, I think that's brilliant. I mean, it's a very profound observation that person made, that we can't necessarily change what's coming to us, the people, etc., but we can change how we treat them or how we consider them, how we open ourselves to them. And also, there's an element in the book too of what to do when you've made a mistake. When you haven't given someone the benefit of the doubt, and then you hurt their feelings. What do you do then? How can you approach? And we keep saying person, of course. In this case, mm-hmm. our outsider is a bear, but how can you make amends mm-hmm. for that and start fresh? And I think that's a great message too, because we will make mistakes. There's no doubt. And the question is, can you recognize that and then change that, turn that around as well?
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned that you've traveled a lot, and I most likely haven't traveled as much as you, but I know when I have traveled to places, especially places where English is not the primary language, I have been more I'm successful fitting in when I allow myself to be vulnerable, when I allow myself to try to speak the different language, and I know I'm going to make a mistake, and I might make people laugh because of my mispronunciation, because I might be saying something completely different than I want to say. But that vulnerability, it's really a benefit for me because people are able to open up. How can we help kids feel okay about being vulnerable enough to the point where they can admit, I made a mistake. I need to fix this?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that is, again, your perceptions are really deep and incredible, and I'm amazed. I'm glad to be having this conversation with regard to my picture book. But I agree 100% that oftentimes in life the greatest rewards come when you do make yourself vulnerable, when you're willing to. I mean, for writers out there, even consider the publishing process. Mm-hmm. You've written this manuscript, you've poured your heart and soul into it, and then you have to send it out. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes, many times, it won't get picked up. It won't get taken. You need to find the exact right editor for it, which I was lucky enough to find in this case. But then, if you're willing to do that, then eventually something amazing can happen. The most amazing thing can happen. And I think talking about fear, I think a lot of what prevents people from being vulnerable or being accepting or all of these things that we're trying to, talk to kids about, or even to admit that they've made a mistake, is fear, mm-hmm. is a big barrier for all of those things. So how do you acknowledge you're scared? It's okay, but when you still act, even when you might be afraid, that's when the richness of life can come in. That's when the wonderful things can happen. In this book, it ends up, being the start of a really beautiful new friendship. but it could be a book. It could be, you meet people you never would have met otherwise because maybe you would have just walked right out and not. And it's also going back to that idea of wanting to be seen. You have to be willing to be seen in order to let that happen. So it's all connected. But I think for kids, talking about fear and moving through that and the rewards that come with that is potentially a great place to start, which is not to say if there are good reasons to be afraid. I mean, we don't want to tell them to ignore their fear,
Right.
But it's just normal that when you're in circumstances that are new to you or you're meeting somebody who's new, it's normal, to feel that. And it's okay.
Yeah, you mentioned, we're having this conversation about some pretty heavy subjects, in regard as we're talking and celebrating a picture book. But I really believe that these are concepts that our kids need us to speak to them about. They're going to learn about them from someone. They should be learning about these things from us. We should be helping to instill the values in our kids. There's loads of media out there that are really willing to sit down and teach your kids values that might not be in line with what you want them to believe in and embrace. And a picture book can be that launching pad, that can be that place where we're talking about a bear in underwear and it's silly and it's over and it's under and it's above and it's beyond, but still it's about friendship and it's about taking a chance to be a friend with somebody who looks different. It's about admitting that I made a mistake and all those conversations. And one of the beautiful things that I hope parents remember is that, when your kid asks you to read over bear under where for the 6,000th time, it's okay because every time you read it, you can talk about something different. It can be the catalyst for a new, deep conversation that will not only help your kids learn, but these conversations that would really create that bond between us and our kids.
Absolutely. And boy, I sure hope that kids want their parents to read the book 6,000 times to them. But I think that stories are just such a great way to approach all of these topics. You talk about, we want to teach kids and this and that. Well, stories provide an opportunity for kids to discover things on their own, and for them to see, oh, wait, they're running away, but it seems like that bear is friendly. What's going to happen? And I think that stories are magic in that way, because they meet kids, hopefully where they are, and allow them through their own journey through the book to kind of access some of these deeper concepts that we're talking about as adults that would probably fly over their heads. But when they see it happening on the page, like you said, in a funny, silly, heartwarming way, they can connect to that. And once they're connected, then it's easier to have conversations like that.
Yeah.
That was always just one of the greatest joys of parenting for me. I mean, my kids are older. I haven't read out loud to them in a long time, but when they would take something from a book that just was unique to them, or they made them think about something in a new way or in a different way, it was always just, it felt like little miracles, sprinkled throughout their lives.
Yeah. Well, we're really happy that you are helping to sprinkle little miracles throughout the lives of kids everywhere. I know that Over Bear Underwear is just released, so congratulations on that. I also know that people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about this book and more about you.
Well, thank you. If they go to penguinrandomhouse.com and look at Philomel books, of course, everywhere books are sold, you can find, and we're also doing, you can get a signed copy by both myself and the illustrator Michael Slack from Second Star to the Right, which is an independent bookstore in Denver. And all of this information is also available on my website, which is juliehedlund.com.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. I want to ask you, do me a favor, if you see Pope Francis, tell him I said hi.
I certainly will. You know, I mean, they say tomorrow's Wednesday. They say that your chances are best on Wednesdays and Sundays, of course. I can't remember why Wednesday, but yeah.
In the meantime, we want everybody to check out Over Bear Underwear, the latest book from our guest, Julie Hedlund. Hey, Julie, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a blast. Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll be celebrating Dyslexia Awareness Month with a look back at some memorable moments from past episodes of the Reading with Your Kids podcast that address the issue of dyslexia. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book and are finding it frustrating and difficult to let the world know all about it, we would love to help you. We have a number of ways that we can help you celebrate your book. Of course, we'd love to have you as a guest on the show. We would love for you to consider submitting your book to our Certified Great Read panel, and we'd love for you to consider becoming part of our monthly promotion program. It's a really affordable way to let people know about your book coast to coast and around the world. You can find out about these really great promotional services by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page and scroll on down to whichever service you're interested in. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Julie Hedlund. Be sure to check out Over Bear Underwear. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Michael Murphy. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. We all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.